I'll go around and stuff. Today is the 26th of July, 2025, and today's episode is to be about measurement. And before I begin that, it's all prefaced on this concept that because we think in language, or we have language, and it's discrete vocal sounds, we have divided up the concept of what things are and actions are and described them with a guttural sound, that it impacts the way we think. There's no way around it, because that is our taught way of communications, and therefore we think in discrete chunks to be able to convey anything. So we're somewhat trapped in our thinking modes, our thought processes, because we're thinking about discrete things for which we have names for which we have words for. We have propositions. One of the big aspects that comes in to, I think, to the whole thinking process, and what we can think or not think, or how we view everything, again, is based on the words that we have acquired and we use to communicate with. Just as I say the word cat, you may get a visual image of that word. What it means to you probably differs in some aspects from any other person in the world. They had a different experience with a cat. Maybe they've never seen a cat. Maybe they had 5 cats when they were growing up. They have a pretty good in-depth definition of what a cat is. But we communicate by using words which have a shared meaning. We all know what a cat generally looks like. Again, some parts of the world, they may have never ever seen a cat. They may not even have a word for cat. I did a mini survey one time ago when I thought about it, and the word sin. I was brought up and I heard the word sin a lot. I had religious education, and most people have it, and most people are aware of the word sin. Okay, so when I did foreign travels, I would ask my guide or the people, do you all have a word for sin in your language? And this is where you're crossing the boundary. You have to kind of describe a concept, because you don't know their word for that concept. And sin is certainly a concept that you can't point to sin, I don't think. You would have trouble drawing it. I mean, people abstractly draw anything. I understand that. But a point being is, it's more of a concept than it is an object. And concepts and objects have shared meaning through the use of our words. Okay, you may disagree with that, but if you think about it, you'll see what I'm talking about. And we are somewhat trapped in our ability to think, because we just things we've already categorized and stereotyped objects, verbs, actions, and part of higher learning, you have concepts, abstractual concepts. Numbers is an abstractual concept that's laid on top of things. 5 apples, 3 apples, 2 oranges, that we do have to get taught. That is a concept. You don't look out in the world without having been taught about numbers and see 5 trees. Where you go, well, that's a lot of trees. There's another concept, a lot, or dirty, or all these sort of words. When you think about something, you're somewhat limited to the words that you have been taught associated with a particular object, concept, verb, so on. Okay, now I'm going to come to the real point of this one, and that is measurement. I started thinking about it. If we're limited in our words, as the way we think, the whole concept of measurement, and I did a little study on it, is interesting to me. That measurement, as we think of it, inches, feet, pounds, um, fluid ounces, gallons, quarts, um, in particle physics, you have all sorts of quantities or qualities of a particular particle, and those are all measurements of one kind. Its spin, its magnetic, maybe its magnetic moment. What is its electron volt equivalent? We have all these sorts of measurements. Okay. Now, when I look back in history, the whole concept of measurement is only about 3,000 years or so, or 4,000 years before the birth of Christ. 3,000, 4,000 BC. That's when they have evidence that there was, in fact, measurement going on. And interesting enough, the first real measurement was from your elbow to the tip of your finger. That distance was used as a standard to measure things, and it was called a cubit, a qubit, which is interesting because if you know anything about quantum computers, they use what's called qubit, qubits. This is a qubit from there to there. They also used measurement using fingers. How many fingers is something long? The measurement was usually, to start off with, would have to do with length. Okay. Only later did measurements come around having to do with volume, or volume and space, measurement, length, width, whatever. Other measurements came along and standardized. What is a ton of coal? What is a ton? What weighing didn't come along for a long time, and it actually started with seeds, where so many seeds was equivalent to some sort of unit that was established. And so if you bought something, you bought X units of the standardized amount of seeds. And that makes sense from an agricultural point of view and everything else. But my point is, once again, disappeared under the haze. Yeah, I may bring myself back out of it. Yeah, there. No. Sometimes it's bizarre. Stop. Move back. Move up. Move down. Shrink light. Shrink light. Measurements. Okay, that'll do. Okay, measurements. So when measurements started, everybody liked it. It's really good for commerce. That's where it really thrived, is if you're going to sell or trade something, it has a measurement. It has ounces, pounds, quarts. It has board feet. It has some sort of measurement to it. So, and there's some sort of been a standard on it. I think it's always interesting to me, if you go to a gas station, you'll see on the gas pump where the state, in the case here, Virginia Department of Weights and Measures, I think it's called, has come and certified that pump is in fact pumping 1 gallon. When it says it pumped 1 gallon, it did in fact pump 1 gallon. Now, Weights and Measures didn't always exist, and it was kind of a trust thing, and some people cheated on it. They'd say you got a gallon, but you hadn't. And how would you know? You got, okay. Anyway, measurements, all kind of measurements. And as we go along and we get more and more measurements for everything, they are constricting. They affect the ability to see things as they are, because the stereotype concepts of measurements that you have been taught, accepted, and everything has measurements to it. In physics, interesting, the farther you go down into the quantum world, you have, I don't know, one particular part, and maybe have 300 attributes, which are in fact measurements. What is its spin? What is its, whatever, tons of, I can't even, if it's an up-down quark, there's all sorts of measurements there. But we have the same thing in just about anything you can think of, millimeters and inches, all that only standardized in the last, I don't know, 500, 700 years that we have standardized on what even miles. Some countries, we don't even share the same definition for what a mile is. In Europe, they use kilometers. Here we use miles. Other places, they may even have a different measurement standard. Point being is all those things, all like the word sin, and so far where my travels around the world, other languages do have the concept of sin, they have a word for it. Okay, back on measurement again, and how it restricted to you. Measurement went beyond just physical measurements. You know, what's the electron spin, how many feet is this, how many miles this is away, how many gallons, quarts, how many, anything you want to think of. It's got some sort of measurement to it, okay? Well, we've also extended measurements over to other things like intelligence quotient, IQ. We have a measurement for that somehow. We have measurements for all sorts of things. We have measurements for vision. You got 20/40 vision, you have 20/60 vision. Been standardized. Measurements of concepts. I don't know what measurements are applicable to politicians. I think they fall, other than having some charisma, how you measure charisma I'm not sure about, but measurements. Testing in school is measurements of learning, and it's usually just memory based. Now in the engineering world it's not true, it's more, do you understand the concepts, and they give you a problem to solve based on the concepts that you've supposedly been taught, and you do have to think about which concepts you apply where and when. But again, it's a measurement of how well you understand something. Or reading comprehension. You read something and then they have a test and ask questions about it. There's been measurements of all sorts of things, and they keep adding new measurements. There's all sorts of metrics related to the internet, you know, or advertising. How many clicks does something get? How many views does it get? There's measurements. My point being, and this is dragging on too long again, this may be in take number one, I don't know, that measurements and language are restricting, and that they limit your ability to think outside of the box, which I've talked about various times. Thinking outside the box. How can you think outside the box when your mind is totally bound by the constructs and concepts of languages they're using and what they mean? It's a great way to communicate, but it has its limitations, and that's my point. So you take it for granted. This is another take for granted thing. You know, I expect most people know when I say a 2x4 what that means. Okay, great. We all can communicate and have relatively shared understanding of what we're trying to communicate. On the other hand, when you're out in the forest and you're totally quiet, I think if you don't think and you just are, you won't see the trees as a big bunch, or you won't automatically think about trying to count them. You won't think about how tall they are. You won't think how big around or diameter they are. You won't use measurements. Measurements are useful, but they are restricting. And to some extent, I think you have to unlearn. There are occasions where measurements do not fit the ticket. One example that I give is when I was in Egypt. I was up on a high plain looking at the pyramids and the Sphinx of Giza. And there was a nice wind blowing up there, and as I stood and I watched, and I was just standing and watching and thinking and feeling. I was not, boy, that pyramid's really tall, or wow, that Sphinx took a lot of work. Think of all the man hours and measurement again. That I wasn't thinking that. I let go of all of that, and I was just feeling the wind. I was just hearing what I could hear, and I was trying to empty myself as much as possible to do that. And what I did pick up on was on the wind, and yeah, we measure wind, how many miles per hour it goes, what direction it comes from. We have all that sort of thing. I was not into that. I was just feeling the wind. I didn't have to talk to anybody about it. I didn't have to measure it. I didn't have to how strong or weak it was. Yes, I was aware it was a strong wind as opposed to a breeze, which we have words for all these things. But if I emptied my mind of measurements or language and just being there and conscious. The wind is what I picked up on, and the wind picked me up. And for 5 minutes, I floated on that wind like a bird was. I could just feel like I was light, and I just floated on these ancient winds that blow across this, another measurement, massive desert, emptiness, space with no definition, just stretches on forever and ever. But I floated on those winds and I really felt free. I did not have any sort of, since I didn't have to convey it, I didn't have to describe it, write it down, I didn't have to paint it, figure out how many gallons of paint that I needed to cover the wind up with. See, that's what I'm trying to say, is you get to thinking beyond where you normally reside, and that's where language has forced you into constructs and way of thinking and looking at things. Because I guess the point is you want to share it, so you got to communicate it. Well, now you got to pay attention to it as to how big it really was, or how many tons did it weigh, or how many man hours did it take to build that thing. This is too long. This may be just the first try of this, but I might put it up and see what happens. But it's about the restrictions that get placed on our ability to think outside of the box or free of various constructs which I think get in the way of you fully being alive and awake and just are. Just your being and just feeling the presence of everything around you without any sort of need to either understand it, measure it, stereotype it into a series of words. And measurement is a big aspect. It only occurred to me recently how big measurement is and what an impact it has on our thinking. So it has its place, but not all the time. It doesn't need to be present. You don't need to measure a relationship with a friend on any kind of scale. You don't need to be measuring any kind of give and take with another person in terms of the scale. Like a weight scale. Well, I did this for them, they should do that for me, for example. That's a weighing, a measurement of my commitment or their commitment, or, how much do they love me? Well, how do you measure that? Is that pounds, cubic feet, spins? It's a weird concept to try to measure, and it doesn't fit that. That's my point. Today is the 26th of July. This is too long, for which I apologize, but maybe you'll glean what I'm trying to convey. I hope so. That's the whole point of any of these muses that I do, is to have you think about something from your own perspective, and maybe I'm not the one, but somebody may be able to make some sort of mental breakthrough and shake off the shackles of language. I'll go around and stuff. That's it for today.